All right, so the question is how do I build a strong wine or spirits brand identity? If we haven't met, I'm Jason, and I've worked three tiers for the last 20 years. So I've learned something new every day about the business. But how do you build a strong brand identity? That has a lot to do with your values, your mission, your target audience, and what you stand for. And I think that that has a lot to do with the story that you want to tell to entice accounts to actually care about your brand because the competition is crazy out there. It's crazy. So a couple of good case studies for this are Casamigos Tequila. Yes, they did have a celebrity driver, but they did a great job of telling the story. Another one that comes to mind is Hendrick's Gin. So Hendrick's Gin was extremely good at telling the story, but intertwining the ingredients of a New West style gin into the brand messaging, and then just making it kind of weird. And things that are irrational and weird tend to stick out in your mind a little bit more. So Hendrick's did a great job with that. A third example of this would be Tito's. Tito's, you know, Tito's and vodka when people order that at the bar. Tito's did a great job of telling the story of Tito Beverage. And that carried them into an enormous amount of momentum. And also, I hear stories all the time about how Tito Beveridge himself used to go to any and every meeting that was available to him, and he would swim through burning hot lava to get to any meeting, regardless of the volume that it was there. So, these are some of the things that I hear all the time. That these are some of the things that I believe help build brands at a meaningful level. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, all right. So another question I get with wine and spirits brands is how do I reach my target audience? If we haven't met, I'm Jason from Kinetic Marketing Systems, and I've spent 20 years in the last three tiers. So the answer to that, or my opinion on that, is that you identify where your target audience spends all their time anyways. A lot of people spend too much time on Instagram when their clients aren't even on Instagram, when their customers aren't on Instagram. And this a lot of times comes down to avatar. If you're selling to everybody, you're selling to nobody. A lot of people would call this qualification. But if you are presenting the same media on every single channel, like I'm doing right now, for instance, then you may or may not be connecting with the right people. So some people like to learn, like some people like to be taught, some people like to be guided, some people like to read, some people like to watch videos. Generally speaking, people like videos, and that's okay. But there's great ways that you can do it, that you can partner with other channels, with the other audiences. Like this is also known as influencer partnerships. But then there's also also working with other organizations like charity events, and events in general are extremely effective in my experience. So some of the case studies that I really like with this one is White Claw. White Claw, yeah, everybody knows White Claw. And White Claw became this kind of brand, like this kind of this experience, and it just completely dominated the entire landscape of the hard seltzer market. So in the beginning, White Claw was all about influence marketing, and they got in front of an enormous amount of people on boats, on beaches, in bars, and they just got in front of a ton of people on social media, and that's kind of how they built their brand. Also, I think the market needed it. The market needed it because they weren't trying to be anything more than basically a soda. And that had a little bit of alcohol in it. So good for them. You know, now everybody's trying to catch up and figure out how to take a little chip at that huge market share that they enjoy. Okay, another question I get is how do I create engaging content for my wine or my spirits brand? In case we haven't met, my name is Jason Luttrell, and I've spent the last 20 years in the last three tiers. Now there's four tiers now, but I haven't broken through that one yet. Anyways, so how do you create an engaging content for your brand? In my opinion, what I've seen work is, brands are typically about lifestyle. They're not about like a benefit. We all already know what the benefit of drinking alcohol is. We also know what the drawbacks are. And so when you're building content for your brand, in my opinion, I would focus more on the people that enjoy it. I would say social proof is extraordinarily powerful. People do not want to make their own decisions. And so if you are showing other people, to the extent of compliance, by the way, there's rules around this, but if you're showing people enjoying your beverages, or if we are listening to them talk about what they enjoyed about your drink, then they will co-opt the decision of that person. And that will become their decision if they choose to buy it. But it's a much less diverse decision scope than you telling them what is good about the product. So show other people talking about what they like about your product. Okay, how do I track my marketing progress? Okay, how do I track my marketing progress for a wine or spirits brand? I get this question all the time. In case we haven't met, my name is Jason, and I've spent the last 20 years in the last 3 tiers. Okay, the question is how do I track my marketing efforts for my wine and spirits brand? In case we haven't met, my name is Jason Luttrell, and I've spent 20 years in 3 tiers. So 20 years working as a bartender, working for a distributor, working for a brand. So that's a long time. But so I have some opinions on this about how you track stuff, but there is objective things that you can track if you were trying to see the efficacy of your marketing efforts for your wine and spirits brand. Some things that a lot of people track just do not matter. They just don't even matter. Like the amount of content you put out definitely matters. The amount of eyeballs and impressions that you get definitely matters. But what I would be looking for is which platforms are right for me. Because what you can do is you can publish to one platform, and then the platform that matters, it's TikTok. And then syndicate that same content to everybody else. And then you see what performs well, and then you analyze why it performs well. So what I'm asking you right now is like, I am making content to answer a question that you have in your mind. And you, like, if you come across this content and it answers your question, then you're more likely to engage with it, comment, like, and share. And so that is the purpose of why I do this content. And I think that if you had a brand, a wine and spirits brand, I would be answering questions of like, is Provence wine actually very good? Like maybe asking kind of a hypothetical question or something that is actually maybe even a little controversial. So that's the efficacy of content on a particular channel is what I look for. And that's in clicks, impressions, shares, engagement rate. So Instagram, for instance, has an engagement rate of around 3%, which is not very interesting to me. So I like emails a lot. I like the virality of TikTok, and I like emerging platforms because once a platform is mature, like Facebook or Instagram, for instance, then they don't try as hard to gain eyeballs, and they try hard to monetize, which means that they have a lot of ads. They start showing the same content over and over again because they have got you dialed in, like very much dialed in. And so I like email because it's direct access to people's eyeballs, their attention, and then you can get clear analytics whether they open it, whether they clicked a link, or if they're going to, or if they unsubscribe. So that's much clearer haptic feedback for me than it is to depend on some third-party platform. But if you have an email, then you know it's going to get delivered or not, and then that's the problem. That's the next problem that you solve. Okay, the question I got is, how do I stay ahead of the competition as a independent wine and spirits brand? Well, in case we haven't met, my name is Jason Luttrell, and I've spent 20 years in 3 tiers. So 3 tiers, not tiers like this, like as in I've been a bartender, I've been a bar owner, and I've worked for brands, and I've even worked for a distributor. So The question is like, how do I stay ahead of competition? The answer is, you need to do the work. It's from what I've seen, in my opinion, the brand owners that are out there making deals themselves, are the ones that learn how to handle any objection. They learn how to network and get in front of as many people as possible. And also the ones that are leveraging technology are the ones that are going to be more successful than the next one. But you're not going to be able to get distribution, at least not a good, reasonable deal, unless you are developing your own thunder and if you are developing your own sales. And so that gives you a lot more leverage when you're negotiating with a distributor partner. Um, and also, it helps you train the next generation of salespeople because eventually your company will get to a point where you need to service more markets, and you need to develop more sales. And if you are the only one who knows how to close, then you're going to have a hard time. So I see a lot of brands that hire people part-time, which is a mistake. I see brands that hire people that are that were bartenders at one point, also kind of a mistake unless you commit to a considerable amount of time into training. But just having a few relationships in the industry does not a good salesperson make. And if you listen to people like Chris Maffeo, then brands are built from the bottom up. So go deep on one account rather than try to get as many accounts as you can. So we have software that allows you to go extremely wide, but your physical personal attention should be focusing on developing deep relationships, getting menu placements, and driving, actual meaningful, consistent, long-term sales, like really developing joint venture partnerships with bars and restaurants. All right, the question is how do I build a strong sales team for my wine and spirits brand? In case we haven't met, my name is Jason from Kinetic Marketing Systems, and I've worked in 3 of the 4 tiers of the now 4 tiers for the last 20 years. All right, so the question is how do I build a strong sales team? If I were to take a guess at this, and I like to think I know what I'm talking about, is you have to be strong at sales yourself. And then the second part would be like, are you making a strong reason why it is a good business decision to pick up a brand that you have? So as you probably know, there's an enormous amount of competition. Everybody's got a vodka brand, and it is just dirty out there. It is difficult to stand out to say, hey, I'm different, here's why. So first of all, I would leverage as much copywriting skill as possible when articulating your brand, making sure you understand your USP, your unique sales proposition, unique selling proposition, your elevator pitch, and then your comp set. I like the Burger King model. And the reason for that is because Burger King drafts McDonald's. Burger King has a $4 billion business or a $5 billion business just by being right next to McDonald's. And so if you have identified your ideal consumer, then you should identify where your ideal consumer goes to drink. And so if you have identified these places, then it narrows down the considerable account universe down to a very, very small place. And so I also like scripts. So I like to make sure that we have an understanding. But in this script, what I've seen work, especially when selling consulting services, is that if you can make the economic case for why it's a no-brainer to carry your brand over the next brand, then you win. And the way that goes is you start asking questions of the buyer. You say, hey, listen, getting the meeting is the first hard part. That is a sale in itself. Again, the second part of the meeting is understanding if they are the right fit. And then the pitch is something along the lines of, we've done a ton of research and we believe that we can support your account if you support our brand. And we believe that our brand will resonate with your consumers with X, Y, Z. And then you want to get crazy? Pull out a pre-batched cocktail. I hate the word pre-batched. I don't know why I said that. Pull out a batched cocktail in a bottle, pour it for them, and say, this is what our brand tastes like in XYZ, in a margarita, in a Manhattan, in a martini. Let them have that context without having to do any work. So you're tasting them on the spirit itself and also the context of how they would be serving it. So if it shows up on a menu, then you're like, okay, cool. Well, this is how it would taste on your menu, and this is what your customers would pay $17 for. You know, sounds reasonable, right? Here's the recipe. Here's a cocktail. I know you guys are great at this, but you know, I just wanted you to taste it in context. Here's a 5-to-1 martini with it, with my gin. And then let them taste that so they can see what it's like, because oftentimes it's difficult and their mind is on other things. But when there's a composed, finished cocktail, it's a little bit easier to wrap your mind around what the qualities of the brand are. And then what you're doing is you're empowering them to make a smart business decision. And that is oftentimes what they're bonused on. Not on some cash payment, not on some on anything else, but on how well the business does. And so these are important factors that I would say would be relevant in building a strong sales team. Okay. Question I got is the question is, how do I train my sales team? In case we haven't met, I'm Jason, and I've spent the last 20 years in 3 tiers of the 3-tier system, working as a bar owner, bartender, and distributor, and for a supplier, and for several suppliers. So how do I train my sales team? Repetition. First of all, like, you can't train a sales team unless you're really good at it yourself. And that's why I think founder-led brands should absolutely be out in the field training individually, because they have typically gotten the most objections and the most rejections from anybody else. And the object of training a sales team is to prevent them and save them from the lessons that you had earned the hard way. And so you want to get them past that as many times as possible, and then make them very comfortable. With my clients, I would like to have daily or weekly sales sessions where we just go back and forth and pitch, because it can get better and better and better. And the more that you share the objections that you're getting, and more importantly, the wins that are available to you, the more likelihood you're going to be effective in the sales. Also, it is typically a numbers game. And so, like, I like to keep track of the numbers. And so if I had a team of salespeople to sell, I would be like, how many accounts are you hitting? How many phone calls are you making? How many text messages are you sending? How many emails are you sending? Luckily, we have CRM that handles all that stuff, and I've actually developed it myself. And what we do is we find out exactly what percentage works, and or exactly what percentage to benchmark based on the volume that we have been doing. So, like, for instance, I know that out of 100 phone calls, I'm probably going to close 5 deals. And so if you want to close 20 deals, you have to make 400 phone calls. And even if you suck, like, you have to suck before you're great at something, right? So I sucked at riding a bike. I sucked at walking at one point. I sucked at talking at one point. And so you have to do those reps. And so training the sales team means just sucking first, I think. And then try to minimize the amount of time that you suck. All right, the question is how do I motivate a sales team? My name is Jason. If we haven't met, my name is Jason. I've spent 20 years working in 3 tiers, and I've been a bar owner, bartender, the whole thing. And so I think that how you motivate a sales team is through positive reinforcement and setting clear, actionable goals. Now, this is my opinion, but I've seen world-class sales teams perform, and it typically involves daily engagement, re-engagement, and training. So daily engagement, re-engagement, and training. Daily specific actionable goals. And, the word priority gets thrown around a lot, but it's much easier for a supplier than it is for a distributor to establish a priority. But being like, you need to hit 5 accounts today. We know that just by going to these accounts, that you're going to increase the likelihood of developing a relationship that will lead into a sale. Now, the cool thing is that with CRM and marketing automation and AI is that you can actually hit way more than that. like thousands more than that. Like you can get like hundreds of accounts a week, just with marketing automation and developing ice cold relationships into sales. And so that is by itself a motivator, is when you realize that you have a whole, like a robot army in the background working on your behalf, and then just appointments just start to pop up in your calendar. That's kind of motivating. But generally speaking, aside from the entire physical and mental element of it, I would spend at least, with my team, I would spend a considerable amount of time getting people to get their own minds right, making sure that their houses are tidy. If that's, like this, a lot of it goes into hiring. So like I would want somebody who has a tidy house, for instance. I would want somebody whose car is always clean to work with me on my sales team, because that is an indicator of mental clutter that prevents them from being, I think, happy and successful. That's just me. It's a little woo-woo, but it's I do think it matters that that you're able to operate effectively, and that starts with your mental clarity. And so I would start with that as a daily exercise with my team. With the laws and stuff like that, you can't necessarily do that, but you can't force somebody to do it. You cannot require it, but what you can do is you can make it available, and that's the kind of stuff that I like. All right, so the question I got was, how do I close more deals as a wine and sales rep? I am not a wine and sales rep, but I have been around world-class wine and sales performers for the last 20 years, and here's what I thought. Now, if we haven't met, my name is Jason, and I've spent 20 years in working as a bar owner, bartender, bar manager, supplier rep, and recently a distributor. So how do I close more deals? You close more deals by asking for the sale. That's for sure. But there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen before that. And I've analyzed in great detail the brands that I bought and why I bought them. And the sustainable relationships did not happen as a result of people asking me for favors. And it also didn't involve me caring about the brand that much. So brand and price were not as big of factors as you might have thought. So to close more deals, what I recommend is that, first of all, you make start as many conversations as possible. It is much easier to nurture a warm relationship than it is to start a new cold relationship. And then the object of the game would be to get a meeting, make the meeting make it as least burdensome as possible on the person that you're meeting. I like to set really short meetings, like 20-minute meetings, with an agenda up front saying, this is what I want to talk to you about. This is how long it's going to take. And this is what you get out of it. Like, what's in it for me, I think, is probably the most valuable thing that I would present if I were trying to get more deals. Is like, I would want to make sure that there was clear value up front, and that there was some sort of qualification process to make the prospect or the lead feel that their time is being valued, and that neither of you is wasting each other's time. So I also like to include reschedule and cancel links in all of my emails. And again, this was all managed by our CRM. And so that way, whenever things pop up, then they can easily, the contact, they can easily just reschedule an appointment and make sure that it's convenient for them. Spoiler alert, if you're on our system, then if the contact cancels an appointment or cancels an appointment, the system will automatically follow up with them to reschedule until they reschedule. And so the client is always, they always feel like they're in control. It's their time, and we are always following up, never let things fall through the cracks. And so what I've noticed about world-class sales performers is that they never let anything fall through the cracks. Now, the hard part about that is that there's only a certain number of accounts that you can actually service at that level. So, it depends on what you're selling, for higher ticket things, for much more valuable products, for instance, then you want your account universe is much more narrow, because there's only a few accounts that can actually afford to serve what you sell. But if you were going like wide and shallow, like a well product, for instance, then then you may have to hit a lot more accounts. And for that reason, you're going to want to be emailing people, texting them constantly all the time. And this is just not possible with a low margin, high volume product. So, you know, you have to use CRM, you have to use automation. And the good news is that it doesn't necessarily have to look like it's automated from the contact's perspective. They don't necessarily know that they're being automated too. And this allows you to nurture and close thousands of contacts at a time, and then follow up with them for when they're ready. Because you may be pitching them at a time when they're not ready. Their cat may have died. They may be under a lot of pressure from their boss. They may just be crushed. They may be like super successful. They may not need your help. That doesn't mean they're not going to need your help down the road. And that doesn't mean that they can't refer you to somebody else either. That's another thing, is people never ask for a referral. Like, hey, do you like this product? Can you think of anybody else who would like this? You know, so like there's so much there that just so much work that just doesn't get done. Anyways, so that's how you close more deals, in my opinion. All right, thanks.